The movie starts by talking about the future, when our planet Earth is in a bad state, because it's dirty and has too many people, more than it can handle. This has made people very sick and unhappy. But then there are some very rich people who decide to leave the mess of Earth and live in a fancy space station called Elysium. It's a beautiful and very modern place where everything is just perfect. Sometimes, these Elysium people come to Earth to check on their businesses. Their life up there is like a fancy storybook. There's no sickness or injuries because they have these special capsules that can heal them quickly. Meanwhile, on Earth, we meet a young man named Max who doesn't have any family. But he has big dreams and a very kind heart. He made a promise with his friend Free that one day he would take her away from all the troubles and bring her to the beautiful world of Elysium. Many years passed and Max grew up. One morning, while he was going to work, he got stopped by police robots in his neighborhood. They were searching everyone, including Max, but he didn't like it. He tried to resist, but ended up getting hurt, injuring his arm. With his arm hurting, Max went to a nearby clinic to get it checked. The clinic was crowded, but guess who he saw there? His old friend Frey from their childhood. She was working as a nurse there now. Seeing her made him smile. It had been so long. They talked for a while, and Max even asked her to have dinner the next day after work. Luckily, she agreed. After leaving the clinic, Max rushed to his job, not wanting to be any later than he already was. But his boss was very angry when he arrived and yelled at him immediately. The boss even threatened to reduce his pay for being late. Max worked at a big technology company called Armadine Robotics, where they make fancy robots and other things. It was quite stressful, especially with the big boss, Carlisle, always supervising them closely. Max's job was tough too. He had to operate a machine that exposed robots to radiation to prepare them. Meanwhile, in the city center, a man named Spider and his group tricked some people into boarding 4 planes using fake IDs drawn on their arms. They had a plan to sneak into Elysium using a route that wasn't allowed. On the flip side, in Elysium, a woman named Delacourt, who was responsible for security, received information about some approaching planes, but they didn't know who they belonged to. So, she contacted a man named Krueger, a secret agent stationed on Earth, and instructed him to shoot missiles at the planes. He obeyed, destroying 3 of them. However, one plane was fortunate enough to land in Elysium before any harm could be done to it. Nevertheless, robotic soldiers were immediately dispatched to apprehend the occupants. Meanwhile, on a landed plane, a mother hurriedly took her child, who couldn't walk, to a nearby abandoned house. There she placed her child in a medical machine that, surprisingly, didn't detect their use of fake IDs and began treating the child. Shortly after, the child was able to walk again, almost miraculously. But just as they were celebrating, a robot police officer arrived and arrested them. Back on Earth after a tiring day at work, Max bumped into his friend Julio. Julio wanted him to steal a car, like they used to do in the past. But Max refused. He had been to jail before and didn't want to go back. He just wanted to live a quiet, ordinary life, nothing adventurous. The next day, while preparing for work, Max noticed a problem with the radiation room door. It wouldn't close properly. His boss asked him to fix it, warning that he'd lose his job if he didn't. Not wanting to be unemployed, Max went to see what was causing the door to malfunction from inside the room. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, trapping him inside. He was exposed to radiation, and there was nobody around to help him. A little later, the door finally opened, and a robot escorted Max to the medical room. The robot delivered the unfortunate news to Max that the radiation exposure was too severe and would be fatal. He only had 5 days left before his body would give up on him. In the midst of this, Max noticed Carlisle, who seemed unaffected by what had just happened to him. Carlisle was more concerned about the chaos in his factory and instructed the supervisor to dismiss Max immediately. Although they provided Max with some medication to help him move, it couldn't change the fact that he had only a few days left to live. Meanwhile, in Elysium, Delacourt was engaged in a heated argument with President Patel, the leader in charge there. Patel was displeased with how Delacourt had handled the situation earlier with the planes, and he didn't approve of Krueger, the risky agent she had employed. However, Delacourt attempted to justify her actions, stating that she only wanted to ensure the safety of her family in Elysium. But Paddle remained firm, warning her that if she made another mistake, she'd lose her job. Back on Earth, Max struggled to make it home, his condition worsening. Luckily, Giulio spotted him and quickly assisted him indoors. Max shared with Giulio that he had only 5 days to live due to severe radiation exposure at work. However, he remembered the magical medical capsule in Elysium that could cure any illness. Excitedly, Max recalled knowing a hacker named Spider who might help him reach Elysium. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Frey felt devastated watching her child battle leukemia. The doctor informed her that she had to take her child home as the hospital was overcrowded. Simultaneously, Giulio aided Max in locating Spider at his hideout. There, Max pleaded with Spider to assist him in reaching Elysium. Spider hesitated due to the high cost and risk involved. Nonetheless, he devised a plan. He suggested that Max assist him in a risky job, stealing valuable data stored in the brain of a wealthy individual from Elysium who was visiting Earth. This data was akin to a treasure trove, containing bank details and vast sums of money. Excited by the plan, Max agreed to participate, but he had one condition. Their target had to be Carlisle, his unpleasant former boss. Spider agreed, but seeing Max's weakened state, he knew Max needed a boost. So he had his team equip Max with a special robot suit that would make him incredibly strong and prepared for the upcoming mission. Meanwhile, in Elysium, Delacourt had a secret meeting with Carlisle. It turned out Carlisle was no ordinary person because he was the mastermind behind Elysium's main computer system. Delacourt had ambitious plans. She aimed for a power grab. She wanted Carlisle to modify Elysium's system to make her the president. In exchange, Carlisle's business would monopolize Elysium for a staggering 200 years. Excited by the proposal, Carlisle eagerly agreed. He then decided to travel to Earth to store vital Elysium information in his brain before returning to Elysium to initiate significant changes. Back on Earth, Spider was preparing Max for their important mission. His team attached a device to Max's head that would allow him to extract information from their target's brain. They also equipped Max with protective armor to help him move quickly and accomplish the task. After all the preparations, Max woke up ready to go. Meanwhile, at the factory, Carlisle was busy uploading a revolutionary program into his brain, a program capable of resetting everything in Elysium. However, this program was highly secure, with tight restrictions to ensure its safety. At the same time, Max, Giulio, and a couple of Spider's associates were gearing up for their significant task. They hurried to Carlisle's factory, and upon arrival, they didn't have to wait long before spotting Carlisle boarding a plane headed for Elysium. Without hesitation, Max planted a bomb on the plane's fuselage. They swiftly left the scene, and soon after, the bomb detonated, forcing Carlisle to land the plane immediately. Meanwhile, up in Elysium, Delacourt learned about the situation and took immediate action. She called Krueger, instructing him to hurry over and ensure Carlisle's safety. She even dispatched a plane and some of Krueger's associates to assist. On the other hand, down on Earth, Max and his team were positioning themselves around Carlisle's landed plane. However, they were soon confronted by 2 police robots, armed and ready. Max fought back fiercely, using explosive rounds to disable one of the robots. Then Max and Giulio forced their way onto the plane to apprehend Carlisle, but they encountered another police robot that opened fire on them. Amid the chaos, gunfire from Spider's associates accidentally struck Carlisle. Max engaged in a brutal fight with the robot, eventually dismantling it. He then checked on Carlisle, but his condition was dire. He was barely holding on. At that moment, they realized they needed to act quickly, so they began transferring all the data from Carlisle's brain to Max. It was a tense situation, but they successfully completed the transfer, and now all the data resided in Max's mind. However, there was a catch. The data was heavily protected, making it difficult for just anyone to access it. Suddenly, Krueger's plane arrived, landing right where the action was unfolding. As this occurred, Max started experiencing intense pain in his head. Without delay, Krueger started shooting at Spider's associates, who were attempting to flee, causing explosions everywhere. Thankfully, Giulio managed to get Max into a car, but Krueger flipped the car over with an explosion. He even shot one of Max's friends who was trying to escape. Max crawled out of the wreckage, only to see Krueger approaching him directly. In that moment, the tension escalated rapidly. Shortly after, Giulio intervened, attempting to confront Krueger on his own, but it ended tragically with Krueger fatally stabbing Giulio. However, Max refused to give up. He retaliated by shooting explosive rounds at Krueger, who managed to evade them using a shield. Seizing an opportunity, Max fled. Meanwhile, Delacourt pressured Krueger to pursue Max relentlessly because Max now possessed crucial information stored in his brain. Meanwhile, Carlisle's condition deteriorated, and he eventually succumbed to his gunshot wound. Conversely, despite his injuries and struggles, Max remained determined to escape. He limped as fast as he could towards the city center. On the plane, Krueger realized that Max had obtained the data capable of resetting Elysium completely. Determined not to let him escape, he deployed numerous drones to search every corner of the city. Meanwhile, in Elysium, Delacourt ordered her team to suspend all space flights. She wanted to ensure that nobody could leave for space until they captured Max. Spider was shocked by the sudden halt in the flight system imposed by the government. On the other hand, just outside the hospital, Frey stumbled upon a severely injured Max. Without hesitation, she took him home to care for him. She tended to all his wounds, and by the next day, Max had recovered consciousness. However, he delivered grim news that his time was running out. His plan was to ask Spider to help him sneak into Elysium to remove the radiation from his body. Upon hearing Max's plan, Frey desperately pleaded for him to take her sick daughter with him, as the little girl was battling leukemia. However, Max couldn't agree to it, as it was too risky, and he wasn't even certain if he would succeed himself. Reluctantly, he had to leave Frey in uncertainty and depart. As Max hurried down the street, he noticed one of Krueger's drones following him. Acting quickly, he knocked it out of the sky. However, it was too late. Krueger had already located Max's whereabouts. In no time, Krueger arrived at Frey's residence, demanding to know where Max had gone. Terrified, Frey claimed she had no idea as Max had just left. However, Krueger didn't believe her and became agitated. He seized Frey and her daughter, intending to use them as leverage, and forcibly escorted them onto his plane. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Max bursts into Spider's headquarters. He demands that Spider arrange for him to go to Elysium immediately, as he has fulfilled his part of the deal. However, Spider explains that it's not simple because the government has stopped all space flights. Moreover, the information in Max's brain is extremely crucial, so much so that it's the reason behind the flight ban. Intrigued, Spider takes a look at the contents stored in Max's mind and is completely amazed. The data has the potential to revolutionize the entire Elysium system and could even grant citizenship in Elysium to every person on Earth, thus saving countless lives. Growing impatient, Max asks when they can depart for Elysium. Spider informs him that it will take at least 5 days to bypass the lockdown on the flight system. This infuriates Max because he doesn't have that much time left before the radiation poisoning claims his life. At that moment, he swears to find a way to reach Elysium somehow. Once he cures himself, he promises to hand over the data to Spider for him to use as he wishes. Before Max leaves, Spider discreetly attaches a tracking device to his back. With determination, Max approaches Krueger's hovering drone to get his attention. Seeing the activity on his drone's feed, Krueger promptly lands his plane near Max. Once on the ground, Max informs Krueger that he surrenders and agrees to go wherever Krueger decides to take him. Without delay, Krueger hurriedly escorts Max onto the plane and informs Delacourt that he has captured him. Relieved, she approves the resumption of space flights and instructs Krueger to accompany Max to Elysium. Shortly after, Spider discovers that the space routes have reopened. Checking the tracker, he realizes that Max is on his way to Elysium. Acting quickly, he gathers his team and sets off in pursuit of Max to Elysium. In the sky, tensions escalated on Krueger's plane as it neared landing on Elysium. Max took a daring move, throwing a grenade at Krueger, injuring him severely. This led to a frantic emergency landing on Elysium. Despite Max's efforts to help Frey and her daughter off the plane, Krueger's men overwhelmed him, beating him until he lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Frey hastily guided her daughter into a nearby residence. She attempted to place her daughter in a healing capsule, but encountered a problem as the machine recognized that the young girl wasn't a citizen of Elysium and denied access. Shortly afterward, both Frey and her daughter were captured. Before long, Max woke up in the heart of Elysium's data center. Meanwhile, Delacourt, eager to access the information stored in his mind, ordered her team to forcefully extract it, despite the risk of it potentially killing Max. However, Delacourt remained relentless, showing no regard for Max's life as long as she obtained the desired data. Simultaneously, Spider and his team safely landed on Elysium and promptly began their search for Max. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Krueger's men imprisoned Frey and her daughter. They also placed Krueger, who was barely conscious, in a healing capsule that restored his injured face and healed his wounds, rejuvenating him. On the contrary, within the central data hub, Max found a way to escape. He inquired about Frey's whereabouts, and upon receiving the information, he hurried to rescue her. In another location, Delacourt confronted Krueger, enraged by the chaos and lack of discretion in their mission. In a shocking turn of events, Krueger attacked her, fatally stabbing her in the neck. It became evident that he had grander ambitions, aiming to dominate Elysium using the valuable information stored in Max's brain. Without delay, Krueger and his gang stormed into the main control room of Elysium, overpowering the politicians present. Meanwhile, Max observed Spider appearing on the security footage and promptly contacted him to update him on his location. The following day elsewhere, Krueger suited up in his robotic armor, preparing to track down Max. Meanwhile, Max arrived just in time to rescue Frey from Krueger's advancing men. Engaging in a fierce battle, Max managed to defeat Krueger's crew, taking down each attacker with determination. After exhausting his ammunition, he safely escorted Frey and her daughter to a secure location, instructing Frey to locate a medical capsule on the surface for her daughter's treatment. Meanwhile, Max resolved to infiltrate Elysium's central system to ensure the little girl received the necessary treatment. As Max navigated through the corridors, he encountered Spider and his team. He requested their assistance for Frey and her daughter, while he and Spider proceeded towards the core of Elysium's system. However, their solitude was short-lived as Krueger suddenly appeared, launching an assault on them. At that moment, Max fought back, shooting at Krueger, who adeptly used a shield to defend himself. Without delay, Max and Spider raced towards their destination, the central chamber of the system. However, a revitalized Krueger wasn't willing to let them escape easily, springing into action to confront Max once more. This led to a brutal showdown, where Max found himself overpowered by the stronger and better-equipped Krueger. Despite the beating, Max's determination sparked a fierce resolve within him. Taking a bold leap, Max attacked Krueger, managing to disconnect the armor cable from Krueger's head. With Krueger momentarily stunned, Max took the opportunity to attach a grenade to him, throwing him aside just before the explosion that obliterated Krueger for good. Amidst the turmoil, Spider swiftly guided Max into the main hub of the Elysium system, ready to execute their plan. Meanwhile, on the open ground, Frey hurried along, carrying her sick daughter, desperately making her way towards the medical capsule. Meanwhile, inside Elysium's central chamber, a solemn conversation unfolds between Max and Spider. During this time, Spider cautions Max that transferring the data into his brain would cost him his life. Nevertheless, undeterred, Max insists, willing to sacrifice himself to grant everyone on Earth the privileges of an Elysium citizen. With a heavy heart, Max calls Frey to bid her a final farewell, hoping his actions would create a better future for all. Yielding to Max's request, Spider initiates the process, altering Elysium's programming. As the task concludes, Max breathes his last. Back on the surface, a miracle occurs. The medical capsule recognizes Frey's daughter as an Elysium citizen, providing the much-needed cure for her leukemia. Moments later, the little girl awakens, her health fully restored, a picture of vibrant life once more. In the central hub, Spider encounters President Patel and his security team, who have arrived to arrest him. However, to everyone's astonishment, robots appear and recognize Spider as Elysium's new leader, a position Spider had assigned to himself during the system overhaul. Without delay, Spider takes action, sending a fleet of aircraft to Earth, each equipped with medical capsules to assist the sick on the planet. So the moral of the story is always double-check your work equipment, or you might end up with a lot more radiation than you bargained for.